Welcome
There's
to.
a sound
I was going to say
effect.
that's how you open a show. Welcome to Flying Flavor. Just for those of you who didn't watch the last episode, I was not here. Cynthia and Deke came in all by themselves, had the keys, made themselves some cocktails. Just to let you know, all of our season, we're now calling it season 2, episode whatever.
Yeah, we were like, we have no idea what episode number this is.
So
We just came in here and did the thing.
So if you watch the episode, you'll actually see, I wrote actually on the bottom when you said, we have to get stuff to fill in, it says season 2, episode 4 at the bottom.
Thank you, Steph.
You're welcome. So this is season 2, episode 5. And as you can see, if you've been listening to us on any of the podcast players, we are now on video. So we're actually getting better because we used to be like really nervous about it.
Now we're just like, whatever.
It's like,
this is what you get, friends. This is what you get.
My hair was curled when I left this morning and a little bit of wind. But this is what you get. But at least I'm somewhat clean. And we have wine, and that's okay. Speaking of wine, since this is an episode about corks and screwcaps, of course we had to have wine today. I am planning to do some G&Ts. I think we'll do that for the next episode because I know that's up your alley.
I do like G&Ts.
So this is Viña Maipo. This is a Carmenere from Chile. So if you're not familiar with the Carmenere grape, it is native. It is one of Chile's most famous grapes. So it's kind of got that fruity, spicy. Sometimes I can get a smoky taste to it depending on where in Chile it's grown, but you'll only ever find it in Chile. So when you go to the Chilean section, you'll see Carmeneres made from all these different producers. I haven't had a bad one yet. I was introduced to it by the restaurant. It's going to bug me now. It is what is the big hotel in Toronto down by the waterfront, down on Front Street?
Like the old one?
No, International. It's very modern.
It's not like the Metro. No one attached to the Metro Convention Center.
Oh my God. You can tell we're tired.
Oh, I'm beyond tired.
Right across the street. Anyways, I'll put in the name of the restaurant. But anyways, that restaurant in that hotel, they were serving this duck breast for dinner one time that Norm and I were staying there, and I fell in love with this. Actually, I'll find a really funny clip. I went to a Chilean wine tasting a few years ago, and I made friends with the people from one of the producers, and I was explaining to them about how I fell in love with Carmenere at that restaurant, and it was actually their brand. So because we're not talking about it today, I'm not going to mention it now, but they were the first Carmenere that I tried, and I just love that smokiness with the duck breast. It was perfect. So I've been kind of recommending them ever since. So I actually did a little promo video for them. So if I can find that clip someplace, I'll put it in.
It would be good with my smoky bacon chips.
It would be very good with your smoky.
We're going to try that out.
Oh, I didn't know you bought smoky bacon.
Oh, it was just, that was what was on the table when I walked through the door.
So you'll notice from previous episodes, we've always kind of talking about white wines and beer and ciders and stuff. But now that our bodies and our palates naturally crave things that are a little darker, heavier, that kind of thing. So now we're having a little bit more salami and stuff on our boards now.
Fall.
Yeah, so I just picked out a few things that I thought would be kind of different and give some different textures. So we have that salami with the Parmesan outside that everyone dies for. And then I have a spiced Gouda. And then we have, this is that breast blue, which is kind of like a brie with a little bit of a blue veining in it.
And that blue is really good with like the fruity...
Those things, yeah, we've had that Stacey basically wants to have in every episode.
Yeah, they're so yummy. They're very good with the blue cheese.
So between that and then I don't think that she realized I was going to have this today, so she brought along her smoky bacon chips,
which happened to match apparently.
It does apparently match.
We're going to try it out.
Carmenere. Yeah.
So here's my question.
Oh, okay.
This is a Chilean wine.
Yeah.
Can you get it on the side of the road in Nicaragua?
Okay, don't be a smartass. Which is really funny because I saw some kind of a picture or something on Twitter, and somebody was posting a picture of something from Nicaragua, and I was going to send it to you, and I thought, no, because she already talks about it so much. You have to see the sparkling wine episode from last season to get that. Okay, so we have some industry updates. I'm going to talk about some Sudbury stuff, and then we'll go through the things that are happening. We haven't done this much yet this season. We did a lot at the end of season 1, kind of just giving you up to date because we tape a podcast every single week. There are a lot of things that are always happening in the world of food, drinks, and travel that we think that kind of deserve a little bit of a notation or explanation or a debate, as it seems.
This is like when you're like, I feel like an anchor person with my you can't see my microphone because our wine is in the way. But I've got like my microphone and I've got my like notes, so I feel like I should be.
I actually printed off notes so that we can actually look like we know what we're doing.
This is great.
Okay, so a couple of things. The new trend, of course, it's been a lot in the big cities right now, but it's really starting to come to Northern Ontario. And it's the whole grab and go concept, meaning that people who don't necessarily cook or want to cook at home and don't want to go to a restaurant and don't want to just grab something, having to make ingredients at a grocery store. The idea of having a restaurant quality meal ready to go that you can just pick up and take home to eat right away or heat up is a really big trend, and that's just starting here. So one of our friends, Tula, who owns the Apollo restaurant here in Sudbury.
Lovely Tula.
She's love her. Yeah, she's won so many awards. Anyways, it's this longstanding family-run Greek restaurant here in town, and she just opened, it's called Tula's Market. That's right inside the restaurant, where she's got her pies and her tzatziki stuff and her dressings desserts. And her desserts. So she's going to have all the things from the restaurant. Love baklava.
Everybody loves baklava.
I know. I try not to have it. I love her rice pudding.
I do love her rice pudding. I actually am like the only person in the world who doesn't like baklava. Oh. And it's not Tula's. I'm not that big on puff pastry and honey. But I love her rice pudding.
So I was really impressed with the fact that she was kind of branching off into this now. So not only can you just go there and have a great meal, but you can actually take something home from there, which is kind of a cool concept. And then the new one,
it's a great opportunity for professionals who are entertaining.
Yes.
Who may not have time to do full prep for a full meal, but you can serve a really beautiful meal to people and like, look, I did it myself. It's like the old commercials for the Rice Krispie Squares where she like puts the flour all over her face and serves them like the most amazing dessert that she's ever made. But it's that kind of thing. It's that ability to also, if you don't have time to do some of the prep of the amazing recipes that we all love to cook or share or eat, it's another way to entertain as well.
I mean, and Tula at the Apollo, as an example, I mean, she's been feeding Sudburyans for so many years. Your risk is pretty low that you're not going to enjoy it. So, exactly. It's kind of a win-win, right? It's kind of helping them sort of spread the word about Greek cuisine. At the same time, you get to support a business. Then the other one that just opened is Amici Food and Beverage Company. So these are our friends. It's kind of like a little co-op thing because they're all kind of gathering together. So it's Tony V's, which is also tied to Ryan Nesky and Nesky's Catering.
Yep.
And who else is in there? Gluten-Free Galore is doing their gluten-free products. And I thought there was one more. I can't remember right now. But anyways, they kind of made this one-stop shop. So even Tony V's pizzas are ready to bake in the oven. I just have to grab them and throw them in. And some of their pasta things. And then, of course, there's gluten-free baking and stuff. Yeah. Because they're not actually in the downtown. Their selection's
really lovely. There's some really great stuff in there.
So they're bringing in some imports and some other things. So there's going to be a whole selection. So this is almost like a little one-stop shop market idea.
I love it.
Yeah. So it's all like local producers and everything that are in there as well. So
and we see more of that in the south end of town. We don't see it more as much in the north end.
That's why it's really nice because these are kind of like south end lively people that are actually opening in Sudbury. They're coming to our side of the world.
I love it.
Which is very cool. Okay, so now on to the worldwide stuff because it's kind of funny and we'll see if we agree and disagree.
We've had some debates or some kind of face-offs already on social media about some of these things because Stephanie keeps posting, look, Cynthia, here's another one for us to talk about.
I'm like, poke.
Yep.
Poke.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So the first one that you may not, I don't think I posted this on the Facebook page. So New Zealand is now implementing this. We want to inspect your phone.
I heard that we were doing it to the U.S. as well.
Well, they've always been saying it, but it's something about mandatory. Like you don't have to go, right? So if you were going over to the States and they said we need to see your phone, we need to see your password. If you say no, they're gonna say fine, you can't come in, right? Yeah. But are you gonna fly all the way to New Zealand? Then what?
Quite frankly, if I'm flying to the U.S., I'm probably still going anyways. So, but yes, I agree.
Right. So I guess they said if you don't give them the password at the border, you can face a $3,200 fine. Yes, which I thought was kind of crazy too. The conversion they're talking about this article. I can't remember if it's Canadian. No, it's through CNN. So this is American. So 3,200 New Zealand dollars is pretty close to Canadian. So if you just want to get that idea. So there's some little notes. I'll put the link on the article on there in case you happen to know anyone who's traveling in that area. So, of course, they're doing it for security and everything else. And yes, there's people on the other side of their government that's saying, no, it's invasion of privacy. So there's a big debate on it. And I guess my thought on this is it's inevitable. I didn't think New Zealand was going to be the first one.
Of all the people to pioneer it, I would have not thought it would have been the Kiwis.
No. They're usually so laid back and.
Well, I mean, Aussies are laid back, but their immigration and their not quarantine, but their customs, like bringing that stuff across that you maybe shouldn't be bringing across, is the most stringent that I've ever experienced. And they have the most amazing. It's like Border Patrol or something show that they have that you can watch in Australia, and the shit that people try to pull off. And the stuff that they get, like we're scared. Like you land in Australia and. Not every time. I believe it's the American or Canadian originating flights. They actually come in and they spray down everything. for pests. Like it is hardcore, and that's what Australia has to, because they're this own ecosystem
They're in a
itself,
bubble.
right? So they have to be aware of things that have been brought in, because things like cane toads have been really, really destructive to their environment. So they are hardcore when it comes to the border, and you don't mess around with that shit. Like, I mean, we talk about being scared of TSA. I'm way more scared of the Aussies. As lovely as Aussies are, they're very stringent. But we think of New Zealanders as a lot even more laid back again. So it was interesting to see that. Here's my take on the whole thing. And it could be because I'm, quote unquote, just a mom who takes pictures of her kids and her dog. I have the same thing with my camera on my phone, or my camera on my laptop, like Steph has on her iPad that does a recording, little thing that blocks the camera, and I could have one for my laptop for work. And I make the joke, it's like, honest to God, if I happen to be changing in front of my computer and you're watching, you're lost, dude. Like, no one's selling naked pictures of Cynthia from Flying for Flavor. And then yet we'll see how it goes. And not that I have naked pictures, I'm kind of past that stage too. But it's more about, like, at the end of the day, from my phone, what is that Border Patrol person really going to get out of my phone? That's where I kind of like, whatever, here, look at the pictures of my dog. There's a lot of pictures of food and probably a lot of booze. Like, am I Googling how to bomb a plane? Probably not. If you are, then you might be concerned, and maybe you shouldn't be traveling. So it's that kind of, and don't get me wrong, my day job is for a prestigious international company that's a market leader, and there is access to my things for work on my phone. But at the end of the day, you're also standing with Border Patrol. And again, is Border Patrol really looking to sell my company that I work for a secret? It's probably not. So that's my take on it. It's like, here you go.
But depending on how you store things. So I think we touched on this in a previous episode. I'm not remember if it was the technology episode or going across the border. But
I think it was the crossing the border one where people are afraid of going to the U.S. I think is when we talked about it.
Because I was thinking about, I am not really afraid of anyone seeing anything on there. But I do have sometimes confidential stuff, or sometimes I help my husband with his business stuff. So I don't necessarily want that out there. But I store everything in a cloud outside of my phone anyways. And as far as I know for the American side of things, they can ask for your password for your phone, but they can't ask you for the password for your iCloud. Right? So iCloud, or whatever cloud system or storage system offsite that you're using, because that's technically not there present with them. So they don't have mandatory saying, well, this links to this, so I get to see that, to see that, to see that. Basically whatever's on your phone, etc. So if you don't store any of your own photos or anything else on your phone, and you have your iCloud turned off, or you're on airplane mode, which has always been the biggest tip I've told people when you're going across the border. You can give them the password of your phone all you want, but if the airplane mode is on, they can't access your iCloud or anything else. So there's your one tip.
That's an excellent tip.
Yeah, but other than that, just so you know that if New Zealand's doing it, some others will be following soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, couple of other things. I only printed off notes for this article, and I thought I printed off the third one, but I guess I didn't. So this is the one, speaking of taking things into another country that you're not supposed to. So even Trevor Noah talked about this last night on Late Show, is the lady decided that not only did she need an emotional support animal, and took the time to register it with the airline, give them a heads up, I'm going to be traveling on this date, this time, or whatever, and I have an emotional support animal coming with me. No problem, ma'am, blah, 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 fill all the paperwork. She's crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's. Then she got there, and she showed up with a squirrel. And their problem is the airline says, we completely understand, but a squirrel is actually considered a rodent. It is one of the things they will not allow. So you can't bring your pet mouse, your guinea pig, right? And now, obviously, a squirrel. So this lady would not leave she was not flying out without the squirrel. Made a big fuss out of it. They actually had to put her, I guess she was in a wheelchair. They wheeled her out. Yeah, there's pictures and videos of it everywhere online. And it's one of those things that we've touched upon it, and that's why I brought it up, because we touched upon it in a previous episode about traveling with pets, about how I understand the whole emotional support. Same thing I saw. There was a lady, I think she was in Vancouver, walking through a store. She was a little dog, and she had one of those vests on it and said, do not pet, or do not touch emotional support animal. Actually, it wasn't even in Vancouver. It was here at one of the dollar stores.
Okay.
It didn't seem like the dog really did anything, but again, I can't always tell. The dog didn't have any commands. Dog wasn't sitting. there's no control. So I guess I don't understand what this whole
I'd love to speak a little bit to it.
Yep.
From two parts. So I have a dog who I haven't talked about much on the podcast, but I'm bound and determined she's going to come on this podcast.
She's a princess.
She is a duchess. Duchess Rory.
Sorry.
Duchess Rory. She's a Chihuahua. And so I don't know if I've shared too openly on this particular podcast, but I do struggle with anxiety and depression. And I'm pretty open about discussing it because I'm all about removing the stigma and making it okay to talk about it. So I had a couple of really rough years. And in January, we got Rory, who is my little Chihuahua. I think she's a Dachshund mix. She's a rescue from the Mexican border. And the difference that Rory has made in my quality of life at home is phenomenal. In my emotional awareness, my comfort level, to the point where if I can bring Rory somewhere with me, I will.
Yep.
And that's why I keep teasing stuff. Eventually, Rory's going to come here because she does.
That's what I said.
And I almost brought her today because I've had a pretty rough day, but it was like, no, let's just come and do the podcast. But anyways, she definitely does. So she doesn't do, it's not like she's got a command that she has to do a thing. Like it's like where a seeing eye dog will keep you safe from crossing the road when you shouldn't be. The seizure recognizing dogs will alert you to seizures and these kinds of things. With an emotional support animal, the concept behind it, like the rough concept, is it provides that person with like an anxiety or depression. Some days when you literally can't leave the house, that comfort, can't explain it. It's like endorphins that are released that you actually feel like you can do the thing, which is pretty phenomenal. That said, there are no, as we discussed before, there are no policies, no procedures. There's no governing body that dictates what is service animal.
Nobody wants to tell someone they can't have their dog.
Well, you know what? There are a lot of businesses out there that print off certificates. You can pay for them. Some of them have like
the links in that show
some of them
notes for
don't.
that pets episode, by the way.
Exactly. So there are opportunities. Now, again, they're still not governed by a legal governing body. They're individual companies and organizations. Some of them are nonprofits. So it's not about making a buck. For some of them are about making a buck, but some of them are not. And for them, it's them about setting up some guidelines. So with Rory, for example, I will bring her shopping with me. I've brought her to like a cafe with an outdoor patio. There are some dog friendly cafes that I'll bring her to as well. There are some stores that are really great about me bringing her in. They've got doggy biscuits behind the counter, and some that are like, that is not a service animal, you must leave. And we very respectfully will leave. I don't have her identified as a service animal because she is not. Now, if Rory were ever to bark or snap or misbehave, then she needs to be removed. And that's why I haven't gone through the process of having her certified, because we're still working on training her. And if you've got an animal, whatever animal, I actually don't have a problem with a squirrel, to be completely honest. But they're less kind of regulated when it comes to shots and things than other domesticated animals are. But there's got to be like a certain level of behavior in a service animal. And that's why with Rory in particular, I haven't gone through that work, because she is not in a space where she is obedient and consistent in following commands. And I think that's really important. And that's why service dogs that you get from organizations have had this training. And I've thought about putting her through it, but there's nowhere in Sudbury, so it's something we'd have to do ourselves. So what I'm kind of getting at is that there's a ton of value around it, even though it's not visible, which is a lot of things around mental health and emotional safety. But there still has to be like a level of training and a level of obedience and a level of safety for other people around the dog. Like if my dog bit someone else because she's poorly trained, who's got that responsibility? And that's why a lot of stores are like, we don't want the dog in here because we don't want any problems. And I respect that. From the same token, if you are a business owner and, someone bringing an animal in is not going to impact safety of people. Like, for example, like restaurants are not legally allowed to because of health inspection situations and whatever. So, but if you have the opportunity to welcome it, I would urge you to welcome it. But I also, on the onus of the people who have the animals, the importance of recognizing that your animal must be highly trained, and not just trained in like your average training program, which is all we're working with Rory. So she's not there, but they need to be stringently, and she does. So,
no, I'm just saying that seems to be the bare minimum of somebody.
But not even that. Trained. It's like they need to respond to a heel, and they need to, if someone goes to engage with them, they have to be ready to not engage because they are working.
Well, that link to the pets episode, there was not only to get that certificate, there's an actual list of checklists that you have to, basically it's like one of those terms and conditions things, right? So you kind of go through it all and you check the boxes of, is my animal this, blah, 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 whatever, and you fill out that form. But the interesting thing is that nobody checks those. So you can say,
you can lie.
My dog says this, and they give you a certificate and a little vest and all the other things, and then you're on your way.
Yep.
So the interesting thing is that this lady went through all this trouble to bring her squirrel, but obviously she wouldn't have paperwork or whatever else. Anyways, I just thought that was kind of fun. Can you imagine being on the plane? Someone walks in with a squirrel. Trevor Noah had to close it off, and he started talking about it. He goes, well, at least the squirrel would have lots of little packages of nuts.
Lots of nuts.
Lots of nuts. But yeah, I know. Only the comedian would come up with that. So the only one I didn't have on there, and that was another one according to Animals as well, is about how the island of Santorini in Greece is now making sure there was kind of just an understanding or it wasn't publicized. I can't see why this is a new thing, but they are basically putting weight limits on for tourists to ride their donkeys up the side of the mountain. So I've been to Santorini. I didn't even take those donkey up the mountain. If you ever seen videos of it, it looks very romantic on that movie, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants and everything else. It's a beautiful island. I highly recommend visiting there. But they have a trolley that goes up right beside it. So, I mean, we had friends of ours who had never even been on a horse before, let alone donkey, and it's hugely steep. I mean, it's a steep climb, and it's quite the long climb. And yes, you're guided along. You're not alone. There's a bunch of them that going up there. So they basically will take your bags or whatever, because we had gone there on a cruise ship. So we got off the cruise, right, for the day. Anything else that you want to take with you, they'll send up on one of those trolleys or onto like this little covered wagon type thing. And you get to sit on the donkey, and they're all roped together, and they go up the side of the mountain. But because they're kind of tied and it's so steep and everything, like if somebody's on one of the donkeys and the donkey hurts themselves, falls over, it's like a domino effect, and they're all going to go ding, 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 ding. So it has to do with not just the safety of the animal, which bothers me.
Which to me is enough.
Correct. But then they also have to do it. You also have to be concerned about the people behind. But just, I mean, considering Norm and I'm not scared. I went swimming with whale sharks. I'm not afraid of a whole lot. But the whole concept of being on this donkey to go up the side of this really steep mountain with people who have never rode before didn't really appeal to me. For the same reason that when I go to Jamaica, in Ocho Rios, everyone talks about Dunn's River Falls. Yep. Been there 3 times. Never once did I actually climb up because I saw more people bleeding than I needed to because they all have to hold hands together. So Norm and I were smart, and we walked up the side of the Dunn's River Falls and took lots of pictures and waved at people. And we basically went up there and had some jerk chicken and beer at the top and waited for everybody.
Nice. That's lovely.
But yeah, because it's not, it was nice to see it. And we went down to the bottom of the falls, take pictures and stuff. But I'm not climbing up there. Yeah. When my safety is relied upon other tourists who have probably been drinking all day before they got there. There were some people in their 70s and 80s that were in our group that we were told that we had to hold on to their hands, like to bring them up. I'm going to be responsible
for this other person.
Yeah, no.
We paid a fortune to do a Segway tour on, was it Tangalooma Island, I believe, in Australia, just off the coast of Queensland, and there's one in every crowd, that guy. I mean, it could be a woman, but the arrogance and I can do all the things and I'm an expert in all the things. And in this particular case, I
hate group tours.
Yeah. This gentleman just thought he was just the most amazing thing ever. And so they were giving us the lesson, and my husband's so the opposite. He's like Mr. Cautious. It's like he's got 5 helmets on, and he's following everything to the T. He's
I can't picture that. Your husband's not exactly this tiny little frail man.
No, he's like, he's like a big bull, and he's very cautious. He's like, if there's anyone I trust with my safety beyond the fact that we are in love, but he just is that person who's conscientious that way. And but this guy was ignoring it all, joking, laughing around, like he knew all the things. He's done this a million times. He doesn't need this lesson. This is BS or whatever. We get out there, and there was an older couple who was retired. So it was this American, in the middle. That's the easiest way we could describe him. He was the one American in the group. In the middle, my husband and I were further behind, and there was an older couple, the senior couple, kind of leading. This gentleman in the middle was not happy with how fast the people in front of him were going. So he knows all the things. And one of the first rules was don't deviate from the path. Because if you deviate from the path, that their segways aren't meant to go in bush. And he deviated from the path. He went down, but not only did he go down, he took out the older lady and broke her ankle. End of tour. The only time we could do this freaking tour in our 5 days we were there, We all got our money back, but because one jackass knew everything, that was it. The tour was over. And it's, I don't even know where I was going with that. Oh, it was that idea that you get that trust, or that having to rely on one person to potentially.
So
here's my question about the article. So is it people are saying it's not fair to say that?
Yeah, it's not that they were just saying, someone was just saying that it is now being strictly imposed, that there has to be this weight limit to tourists. And of course, there are always going to be people saying, well, that's not fair to those who want to go and do that. It was like, well, no, for the same reason that Midway ride saying you need to be this high to ride the little car. You have to be that high for a reason. It's for your safety.
It's your safety and the safety of others.
And it was built for. So those donkeys were only built to hold so much weight.
They're animals. They have like it's not like it's a piece of steel that you can sit on. Like you're hurting a living being.
Yeah.
And like you see, even if you really don't care for the animals, then I don't want to know you. But then you're also dealing with all the humans involved. I would love to hear if we've got listeners or viewers who are like, this is so unfair. You should not ban people over a certain weight.
Convince me.
From being in those donkeys, then I would love to hear from you, because I think you're crazy. So if you've got I'd love to hear a valid, valid isn't fair. I'd love to hear a thought out response to why this is not a good thing to restrict people based on their weight from being on these donkeys.
Yeah. And I also think that there's so many of these donkeys, and I think part of it started to do, because they're mostly business people who are running these things depending on the port, and they said a lot of the donkeys were basically so injured that they couldn't operate anymore.
That's not
so
right.
Then they can't take any more tourists or visitors to Santorini who are coming up from the coast.
That's not right.
Right? So yeah, too many donkeys laid up, and then all of a sudden people are waiting, and then have to take the trolley, and then you have to pay the trolley. Anyways, it's one of those things that doesn't help anyone. And I understand that, yes, it's kind of this cool experience that you wanted to do, but honest to God, I've ridden the trolley. It's really nice. You're still on Santorini.
Right?
I mean, you're still on Santorini in Greece.
Why jeopardize other people's safety and the health of an animal? Because you need to do the thing.
You need to do the thing. So I thought, since this is a corkscrew, screw cap kind of thing, and we're talking about opening wine and screw caps, that I should give you a little bit of a 411 on a waiter's corkscrew. They call this a waiter's corkscrew for a reason. It is a waiter's favorite tool. Has everything you can possibly need on it, including a little bottle opener at the back. The new ones do anyways. A 2-step opener process. The standard screw part in the center. And then, of course, it has a handy little blade at the far end. I would say this was more like a hospitality switchblade, if it makes any sense. So, when you're opening the wine, there are many ways that different restaurants like to do it. Some insist on putting it on the table to spin it and take the foil off. Other ones insist on making sure it never touches the tabletop. I say that the more that you're practiced at it, then you can kind of lift it off the table. Spinning it on the table or spinning it while you're cutting it also gets caught up in the tablecloths or anything else that's on the table. So you're just going to take the knife and you're going to cut off just at the base. There's a little ledge here. Do you see that? Of the glass bottle, and you're going to use that knife and just gently pull up the foil, and it comes off in a little cap. Next thing, you can put the knife away so you don't cut yourself. Then you're going to take the screw part, open the whole thing up so it's like 2 arms, and placing the tip in the center, you're going to slowly bring it down, but not all the way. As much as you're tempted to put the entire thing in, you can see the whole screw. Leaving that last notch is usually the best spot, because if you look closely, you'll see that this second part of the lever is just going to sit on the top of the neck of the bottle. So I'm going to do this with my right hand, because that's how I do it. So then when you hold it and use that lever for the first one, and then you do it the second one, don't use the corkscrew to pull it all up. Some of the wines, especially old world ones, they have really long corks, and they're even longer than the screw and the actual lever that's pulling it up. So you'll end up breaking it sometimes. So as soon as you get to the point where this is completely off, and as far as you can go without having to yank it any further, you can actually almost see some air between that lever part and then the neck of the bottle. Just use your hand to wiggle the rest out. So from there you can start pouring. If you really want to get fancy, the foil on the top of the bottle is, of course, made of metal. And any serious wine drinker who has a very delicate palate will know that if acid from the wine comes in contact with metal, it will change the flavor of the wine. So if you are serving somebody a proper tasting or a very old wine and you really want them to taste it exactly the way it's supposed to be, just to not take any precautions, I always take the rest of the foil off. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a introduction into how to use a waiter's corkscrew, and you can practice alone at home so that next time you're entertaining friends, you can kind of wow them with your skills. Okay, so now's the time for our main part of our show, corks and screw caps. One of the reasons I wanted to do this is because every time I do a wine class, I get asked this whole thing about screw caps, because I get so yes, there's not the same romantic opening procedure to open a bottle of wine with a screw cap, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the wine inside it is any less good than the wines with the cork. Yes, some of the older wines, some of the bigger players, more expensive wines take the time to put the cork in for their own reason, and because it's going to be a long period of time. But there's a lot of reasons, and that's why I printed out some notes. There's really cool reasonings for it. You can look at the real notes, and I'll just go off the top of my head.
I want to read one of these like an anchor at some point. It's going to happen. It's coming up, folks. Tune in.
Except for I copied and pasted these from all different things. Some of my speaking notes from seminars, and sometimes it was from online. Yeah, so there's a mixture of everything. I kind of tried to make it as succinct as possible.
It's actually pretty good.
Well, thank you.
Good job. Good job.
Thanks. So, cork is a renewable resource. I get it. So, for all you tree huggers out there, using
that wasn't judgy at all.
No, because, hey, I say that because I am also one of them. I am one of those nerds that like recycles.
You recycle the things.
I recycle and I compost, and I am my own tree hugger, so that's what I can say. But usually there's always someone who's worse than me that wants to come back at me and say, well, if you're using screw caps, that's metal, and then that's not the same recycle. And okay, stop you right there. So what the problem is happening is that people are throwing out their corks. So as much as
we're not renewing that resource,
they're not renewing that resource.
What are we supposed to do with corks?
Well,
are they like composted? I save them for arts and crafts.
Oh, if you ever have some really cool arts and crafts, there's another thing. So I save mine. So my friend Lori from Peterborough introduced me to this idea, many years ago when we first met. So that would be back in early 2000s, a long time ago. And she was telling me how she was saving corks. And I said, well, why would you do that? She said, I'm not sure. She said, I'm going to do something with them some point. I went, oh, that's a cool idea. I too want to do something with them some point. And I'm still toying around with it.
Early 2000s, you've been saving cork since early. We got to put that out there, folks. You've been saving Stephanie, and the volume of wine this woman drinks. I'm actually going to do my Sun Centera Dance Studio bottle drive just out of Stephanie's blue box. And you've been saving cork since the early 2000s?
I have, those clear garbage bags?
How many?
I don't know, I'm at 5.
Where's my husband? My husband needs to be listening to this. I've got like 2 buckets like this, and she's got 5 garbage bags.
I told you I've been saving them for a long time.
Oh, you could do a whole floor.
But I have to admit, there's a lot of times also, I also owned a catering company for many years with bar services.
That's what I mean. That's a lot of corks.
So all of those corks, the staff knew, you take out the cork, you don't throw them out, you put it back in the box.
You need to do like a floor in your wine cellar of wine corks.
Actually, it's already...
She probably has a beautiful floor anyways.
The floor downstairs where my working kitchen and the wine cellar is already cork, but it's a cork-made laminate product. Mm-hmm. So it is, recyclable. I'm always thinking. But at one point I was thinking to do like a cork inlay on a bar for a wine bar, or to do like when you're walking into a wine bar or restaurant, to have an inlay in the floor, right, with all these corks from my travels or something. That's cool. So I have them.
So do you have them sorted by like where they're from?
Oh my God, no, I'm not that nerdy. But they're seriously, like, I put them in Ziploc bags in the drawer where all my plastic stuff, now I'm telling it's TMI, but so I have one drawer in my kitchen that has all of my plastic containers and stuff, and then there's always a Ziploc bag in there, so I always know you take the cork and you throw it in there. Once that bag is full, it goes downstairs. Once I get to the point, it's at the back of the wine cellar, and then eventually when I have enough to fill up the big bag, and then I put all the corks in the big bag, and then it goes in behind the stairs.
I love you. Mine are just jumped into whatever glass vase is close, and we fill it up, and then we fill another one.
Okay. So anyways, that's where they go. So I save them because there's not really a thing to do with them. You have to check with your own local city bylaws about where they would say putting cork, but they really don't go into a green box. They really don't go into a compost
like that's
thing.
what I'm like, what do you do with them?
Yeah.
Beyond making crafts.
Correct. So they end up in the landfill. So they're not doing anything, and they're not getting reused, and they're not getting repurposed. So one of the good things is that a metal screw cap is actually probably even better because people put that in their blue box, right? Like a metal can or anything else. And then it does get recycled with everything else. So you can be reusing that metal over and over and over again. So that's the whole idea of using the screw caps. But there's a couple of other things. Mm-hmm. So the other thing that people don't realize, or those who are drinking wine and know about the aging process of wine. So wine is produced and bottled, especially reds, to be aged. And the way that it ages to the point where it's at its optimal drinking quality is through the addition of oxygen. So yes, cork is a porous material, so a little bit of oxygen always gets through that cork. But one of the things about cork is that it's not like it's a steady stream. Like you don't know how much oxygen, because cork itself is not
every piece is different.
Correct. And not all of the corks that you see nowadays are 100% cork. Which is another thing.
Some of them are like blends. You'll see some plastic in them.
That's
and some other
right.
Stuff. Yeah.
So again, you can't really recycle them or anything because they're not 100% cork. So maybe some of the higher end bottles. So a lot of the manufacturers, especially those who are making wines over $30 a bottle, they will take the time and the expense to make sure that they have 100% cork in that. But for the most part, they are not all cork. Mm-hmm. So the amount of oxygen is not necessarily regulated, right? So it's still hit and miss, and you can still end up with a corked wine, right?
That's why every once in a while you get when you're like, yeah, that one wasn't a good one. There's $30 down the drain.
That's right. So then there's other times. So now the screw caps, not only it may look like because, oh, it's metal, it's not letting in any oxygen. Actually, it does let in very little bit. Yeah. There's an actual term for it, which I can't remember what the term is. So I'm trying to be all... I'm trying to think of the actual using a cork. I can't find the actual notes because I found it. There was a scientific term for it. Oh, no. I'm gonna take this out. Oh, there we go. Today you can buy screw caps with calculated levels of oxygen ingress over time.
Ooh, that's a big fancy
word. So ingress. So basically it's just saying that they actually, when they're making these screw caps, they are designed that the wine doesn't get out and very little oxygen gets in. But because they are designed and made through the manufacturing process to be identical, they can control a little bit more about how much oxygen is getting in on an ongoing basis. So they are a little bit more reliable. So there's less likely that you are going to get a corked wine with a screw cap. That being said, there are still a lot of manufacturers for making bottles that are under $30 that have not taken the leap. And they are, because they are concerned of the consumer's aversion to screw caps, that they are going towards these cork, rubber, synthetic type cork-like.
Because they look like cork.
They look like cork, and
like
you still get
caps.
to do the whole big presenting and the cork and the one. Anyways, you still get to go through all of that, but you're still not, but it's still not necessarily going to mean that the wine's any better, right?
Yeah. You definitely can't judge a wine based on whether it's a screw cap or a cork. I mean, that's definitely kind of a takeaway from this, that you'll have some really amazing wines that have a screw cap and you'll have some real crap wines that have cork. So it's still what's inside the bottle that makes the difference. You can't judge it based on that. Just like the same thing, like I used to buy wine based on the cool label because that was...
There are still a lot of people who buy it on the cool label.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, the only reason I'm as educated as I've become, and I'm not educated is nothing compared to the lady beside me, but learned and become more... discerning with my palate is through experience and trying things and recognizing that the cool label didn't necessarily mean that it was a good wine. But it's the same way with the screw cap.
But it got you to buy it.
It sure did. And that's marketing, right? So at the end of the day, I could talk about marketing for hours, my friend. We could both get really nerdy about marketing really, really fast. So we're not saying that, so are we saying that screw caps are better than corks, but we don't like them because they don't look as cool?
No, because I guess when you say corks, what kind of corks now? Because they're not 100% cork like they used to be. Mm-hmm. So 100% cork is the natural way. It's the old school way. And if you're one of those purists that likes things the old school, old world style, you're still going to find that a lot of those really big producers are still going to use certain glass, certain grapes, certain procedures like they did in the old days. That's part of their process and as part
But
of
is
their
it better?
for their wine. But if they're a lot of times these wine producers are making those wines to age for a long period of time, right? So for that case, yes, corkscrews are like 100% cork. It's been done for centuries for a reason, and it will work really, really well. But they can afford to add in the cost of that 100% cork to the cost of the bottle because they are higher in product. And by that point, people don't care. Anything under about $30 a bottle, people start penny pinching, right? They're still going to necessarily choose a $24.95 bottle over the $29.95 bottle. And for those things, pennies count. So the cost of 100% cork versus a rubber cork versus a screw cap, depending on what other wines they're making, they're not going to do some into screw cap and then some into other ones, depending on what bottles they have in stock and what they're using for the rest of their wine production. They'll usually either do all a synthetic product or they're going to do all screw caps. So it's not necessarily going to be one or the other. But it's one of those things that when you see a screw cap, it can be on a reserve bottle of red that's meant to be stored for another 5 years. You can't.
Again, don't judge it by the screw cap.
Do not judge it by the screw cap. The only cool thing is the only thing that there's all kinds of cool tools out there. And this is my only caveat. I happen to like the Corvin system. I think I sent you the link for that. That's the wine. That's the system in there. That's the wine saver.
Oh, the one where you can like suck the wine out.
Yes, exactly. And it puts in this little gas thing to fill in the space
cool.
in the cork. Mm-hmm. But you can't use that with a screw cap.
No, you can't. You open it. That's it. It's open.
That's it. It's open. So
that said, the average wine drinker probably doesn't have the Corvin cool thing.
No.
Your discerning wine drinker may, but
correct. So for that case, that's the only thing that if you are, or you're the only wine drinker in your household,
which is my challenge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or you're married to somebody who likes to open a different bottle every night.
Mm-hmm.
So for those kind of situations, the Corvin's been really handy. So we're not wasting a lot of wine. Sometimes we could pull something out of the cellar and he can take a taste of it without even having to, like, we're not even uncorking it, right? And we can take a taste.
Do I feel like this today or not?
Yeah, or it's not quite.
Not ready.
Yeah, it's not ready for consumption right yet, and we can put it back in the cellar. So those kind of things. The only thing with the screw cap is that once it's open, it's open. Even if you tie it really tight, it is still going to be a little bit more oxygen getting in there than before. Mm-hmm. So, and then oxygen just kind of rushed in when you opened it anyway. So it depends on how much you had it unlocked or unopened.
If you're drinking red, you might be breathing it, so you want it open a little bit longer.
And again, I don't know about other people, but we'd rarely have leftover wine.
Well, that was a joke I was going to make. I'm like, what is this leftover wine you're referring to?
So I always have
I do that challenge when I drink wine alone, but I never drink alone because
and
that
sometimes
would,
I have
be not
part bottles that are on my counter. Like if we didn't finish one and we didn't drink it the next day or whatever, and it gets to the point where it's just not ready to have a glass yet, it'll be fine for me to throw into a stew. Yeah, so I'll use that for my cooking wine.
I do that as well too. I'll use my leftover for cooking.
So in other words, when you come to my house, if there's wine in the counter and it's got a little cork in it,
don't drink it.
Don't just automatically, because it'll be okay. I never cook with a bad wine, but I just can't guarantee that.
Honestly, if you go to Stephanie's house, she's got 4 bottles of wine uncorked and ready for you anyways, and probably poured in a glass. So you won't need to go to the one that's on the counter.
Yeah, don't pre-game before you come to my house.
No,
there's no point.
I learned that the hard way.
So last little notes that will sort of close out for today. As you know, we're working on our audio video skills. Not only we're getting better at this whole taping thing, and I'm kind of planning together. I've got all new software that I'm using for the video stuff. This was not my forte. This is not what I went to school for. So you'll find every once in a while we want to be completely open with this process because again we were podcasters to start off with, and
we had to learn how to podcast.
This whole TV stuff, I think it's a whole new thing. We didn't even get our audio stuff down pat, and we barely got that done, and now we're working on video stuff. But
welcome to Working with Stephanie. It's a new idea every day.
Every day. So I have all kinds of other ideas, and there'll be other little clips. You'll probably get a little bit more bonus videos that are sort of snuck into these videos here on YouTube, as opposed to the podcast. But I'm still a dedicated podcast listener. I listen to them in my car. I listen to them when I'm working in the kitchen. I listen to them when I'm getting dressed in the bathroom in the morning. So I'm still a podcast listener by all means, and I like that fact that you'll be able to go flip between one and the other. So you'll always find us for free on either channel. And then don't forget about our crew takes. We're both going to be traveling a lot, so this is our new thing. So I used to do the travel reviews and stuff, actually type them out and everything on my website. And now I'm finding that people don't necessarily have the time to be reading and running through them all. So those ones are not on video. They will be on audio only. Just makes it easier because sometimes, again, like the last one, I was doing laundry, right? The time before that, I was unpacking. So I just uploaded one from about downtown Vancouver, and there'll be just a quick overview on hotel that we stayed at, where we liked it, where it was located, some little tips on maybe public transportation, favorite restaurants that you went to, a couple of bars, new trends that you're seeing in the dining thing. So that'll be kind of it. It's usually about maybe 20 minutes or so. So I did one for Vancouver, and the first one was, well, how was I?
Montreal Wine Show?
Cuba.
Cuba. Oh,
Cuba.
Yes.
But I am going to La Grande Dégustation in Montreal, November 2nd and 3rd. You want to come?
No, because where am I going to be?
Oh, yes,
November 2nd and 3rd.
She didn't even want to wait until I finished saying it.
No, I couldn't. I'm too excited. Go ahead. You finish. I'm not interrupting at all.
Then she can talk about that. So I'm doing La Grande Dégustation in Montreal, November 2nd, and I will be in Palm Springs, California, about November 20th or something like that. Just around the time that she gets back from...
But before that, Cynthia is going to Australia. So yes, I'm returning to my, I don't want to say my roots, but my like secondary roots that I planted in Brisbane between 2009 and 2012. So I don't know what kind of crazy things I'll bring back, but I will share some stories, and it may have a lot of drinking involved because I'll be catching up with a bunch of girlfriends, but also traveling. We'll be in Metro Brisbane. The bulk of the time we're traveling up to Noosa. On the Sunshine Coast for a bit, so we'll talk a little bit about traveling through Australia, things like the custom stuff that we talked about, and things about the season because it's spring in Australia as well now too. So
that would be kind of cool. So we're actually planning to tape an episode at some point while she's gone, and we're going to arrange it so she Skypes in.
Can't wait.
She may have been drinking prior to taping the show, so that should be interesting.
Well, I don't know, because when we tape the show, it's early morning. Well, maybe I might have been drinking.
So I know how to integrate the Skype conversations into these videos too, which is actually going to be kind of, I know. So yes, you have to put pants on for that too.
No, I don't, because it's only from it's only from here up.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure someone takes pictures.
You'll never know.
Anyway, so there's lots of stuff coming up, both on audio and video, and every time we're doing clips, especially from our classes at Legacy Service Academy. So make sure you're following along both on the YouTube channel and the Facebook pages and Instagram pages and Twitter feeds of both of them, just so you can keep up and see what's happening here in Northern Ontario. And make sure you listen to us on all the podcast players. Please rate and subscribe for each of the YouTube channel as well as the podcast player where you're listening to us, because then we can find out who you are, where you're listening from, and then we can kind of keep track of how many people are listening in what areas and that kind of thing. It kind of helps us to promote the podcast in different areas. It helps us to get advertising for future episodes, and it also kind of shows us which episodes you're listening to more than others, so that we can kind of tailor shows that are more to your taste.
I was going to say it also allows us to tailor them to your geography and that kind of stuff as well. We feature predominantly Northern Ontario a lot of times because that's where our main listener base is right now.
That's right. So, but we're mobile. We'll eat and drink anywhere.
We'll eat and drink anywhere. Cheers.
Hence the flying for flavor. So until next week, cheers. What do you think about us podcasters doing this whole video thing? If you like what you see and you still have wine in your glass, there's more videos down below that you can always keep up. Or subscribe and you'll never miss another one.